you believe Jeffrey Epstein actually killed himself?
Absolutely not.
Who do you think had him killed?
I don't think he's dead.
Think he's still alive?
I think so. Knowing Jeffrey Epstein for 3 years, he would never go down in history as a man that killed himself or allowed somebody to kill him. His ego and his pride is through the roof.
So if you think he's still alive, where do you think he is?
Totally laughing at us. I think he's in Israel. I was 14 when I met Jeffrey. I started working at 12. And she turns to me one day and she says, I know this really rich and powerful guy, and he really likes to get massages from young girls. It's just a massage, Marina. Like, you've been through so much worse with your stepfather. I'm just like looking around and there's like pictures of Prince Andrews, President Trump, Bill Clinton. I'm pretty sure there were so many other people that I didn't know at the time, you know, because I was just 14 years old. He would tell us, he's like, I own the banks, I own the presidents, I know a lot about people. And if I share what I know, it would be a disaster.
Today's podcast guest is someone that I admire and respect a ton. Marina Lacerda is someone that has had to experience things that most people don't have to experience in their lifetime. And instead of cowering in the dark in her story, she just decided to stand boldly and come out publicly and be courageous and stand in the face of evil and share her story. Now, I want to caution anyone watching or listening, viewer discretion is advised. The story is graphic, it's intense, it's dark, there's evil, and she talks a lot about her sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. But we're going to navigate her story with honor and care. The Bible talks about how we should stand with those who have been oppressed and seek justice for those who have been exploited by evil, wicked, powerful people. And so it is an honor and a joy that I have the opportunity to get to talk to Marina Lacerda. And so I pray that her story encourages you to stand in the face of evil for truth and justice. Marina, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So happy you're here.
Such an honor.
I know you've done a lot of interviews, and before diving into the darkness and the headlines that people always know you as, like, who was Marina?
You know, I was just a girl who went through so much in her life. And I think trying to navigate at a certain time, like, what could I do with my life? And a little bit lost. And then when I broke my silence, I kind of figured out what I wanted to do. But I always had a I think I'm going to save animals. I'm going to adopt animals. I'm going to open up, where, an adoption center for dogs, start saving them. But I'm so weak in the knees for them, I would have probably kept all of them. So I'm just a girl with a beautiful daughter who loves dogs and now really wants to help women and men, speak about what they've been through.
What was your life like as a kid or even early teenager growing up?
It's crazy because when I come and I do a lot of interviews, I'm like, I had such a great upbringing, and like my life even as a child and as a teenager was great. And people are like, how? You went through like all these horrific things. And I'm like, I understand, but these are moments in life, right? Like nobody wakes up happy every day. Like not even the richest person in the world, right? Not even the healthiest person in the world is waking up like, I'm happy, I'm happy. So yes, I had very horrible moments, but I still managed to enjoy myself with my family, my friends, So it was good and bad, I guess I should say.
So you're from Brazil, grew up in New York,
yes.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like growing up in the city? Was it chaos? Was it fun? Was it scary? What was that like?
Well, so when I moved from Brazil, it was a, total like culture shock, right? Because Brazil is completely different, and the way I grew up in Brazil, we were, middle class, poor, struggling to be middle class, and thank God for my grandparents and my uncle that really helped out my mom. So, we barely had anything. I would go over to my grandmother's house if I wanted like good breakfast, Yeah. So thank God for that. And like my ballet, my jazz, and my tap classes were paid by my uncle. And when he would come to America, he would bring me back a lot of things like Barbies. He brought me back rollerblades one time. And I swear to you, like all of my friends were like, oh my God, we need to, and we're all different sizes. We would like go from one end of the street and then we'd, give each other.
Let someone else do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then when I came to America, I was like, whoa, this is completely different. Even the way I dressed, I got made fun of a lot. And my body, I didn't develop very fast. I think American girls are, everybody's different. I think everyone develops differently. And I didn't develop very fast. So I really got made fun of. And in Brazil, we don't have that. Like, it doesn't matter what you wear. It doesn't matter how you look. I think that everybody, all my friends in Brazil were very, much different than my friends in America. So it was a culture shock. It was different.
Are you an only child or do you have siblings?
I have a sister.
Okay, cool. And what was your family dynamic growing up in New York?
Like off. So when I came to New York, my mom had already, met her boyfriend. And when I came, the first thing that my mom said to me, and we were in Astoria Park, and she said to me, listen, I just want to explain something to you. Here in America, if you hit a child, the parent goes to jail. But I'm going to tell you one thing. If you do the wrong thing, I will smack you. I will, she said it in Portuguese. And you'll be taken away. You'll go to a house with a different family, and I'll go to jail and I'll get released, but you're going to be living with a different family. So make sure you know to do the right thing, because, there will be consequences, and not for me, but for you. So that always scared me, because in Brazil, you're allowed to, discipline your child up to, a certain extent. And I think, back then it was like very serious, to discipline your child in that way. So I was always very scared of that. So she met, my stepfather, and I stayed a year away from my mom, because I stayed in Brazil. She came to America just to, get things started. And I think maybe 2-3 months after I moved, to America, my stepfather started to put on porn. And,
Whoa.
And yeah.
And how old were you?
I was 8 years old.
In the living room?
Yep. And he would lay me down on his lap. Like, I would have my head on his lap, and he would put like a sheet over my head, and he would just watch. Now, I'm 8 years old. I don't know what is going on, right? And I think even as adults, like, we are just so curious, right? Everyone has curiosity. Wow. So I would peek through the sheets, and then I would see like these things that were happening. It was so confusing to me, you know? Because I grew up in Brazil with my grandmother, and, there was a church down the block. We would go down to church. My grandmother was like, lunch everyone has to come here Sunday. So we were very united, like, and boys would try to do stuff to me in Brazil, and my grandmother would be like, no, that is not, so I already knew like these things were not allowed. Yeah. So after a while, he just took off the sheets off of my head, and then I was watching porn with him, and then next thing you know, he started to reenact what was going on to the porn, what was going on with me. And I was completely confused, because I didn't know anything about, anything of sexual acts. I just knew like a little tap kiss, like that's all I knew. Like that's all boys would try to do with me in Brazil, which I was still young, but boys would try to do that. And I was confused, and I didn't know what was wrong. I had no idea, and my mom was at work, and my stepfather had the schedule where he would come in and out, and it wasn't like a set schedule. So it went on for a really, really long time. Then we moved in, then my mom got pregnant with my sister, and we moved into a bigger house. And up until 10 and a half, all these things were happening with me. My stepfather was sexually abusing me and teaching me things that I wasn't supposed to be taught at that age, right? And it kind of messed me up later, actually, because I started, when you can't have intercourse, when I had a partner and I was able to, and I was at the right age, I started to think that everything I was doing was sinful, because I later, when my mom caught me and my stepfather in the bed, he was like rolling around with me, and I didn't know, and he threw me off the bed when she walked in. And she was pissed, and she was like, what's going on here? So then, they went into the other room, and they started to argue. And then she came into my bedroom. She said, listen, I know what's been going on. Never asked me, just thought that she knew. She's like, it's never going to happen again. I spoke to your stepfather. It'll never, ever happen again. Don't worry about it. And then she explained to me, like, listen, this is an older man. He can't be touching you. This is not the right things to do, And I was like, okay, well, this is absolutely wrong. He didn't stop. He continued.
Whoa. So you're 8-9 years old. It went from, oh my goodness. So you're being sexually abused by your stepfather, and your mom had known about it.
She found out at 10.
she found out, then she was like, it's going to stop, but it never stopped.
Right.
And did she know that it hadn't stopped?
So
And-
then I would go back to her and be like, hey, he's like doing this again. You know, he would creep into my room in the middle of the night, and I'm like, I would get so, you know, not only annoyed but scared, because now I don't want to say anything, because as soon as I would tell him I'm going to say something, he would start physically abusing me. So, and then later on, and you know, like when it would be the next day, I'd be like, Mom, like he's doing it again. And she would go and argue with him, and then he would stop for like a month, and then he would do it again, and then I'd go to her. It was a cycle that didn't break until I was 12 years old.
Oh my goodness. So that's happening with your stepfather. You're being raised. Your mom is pregnant. And you said you grew up kind of poor, struggling to be middle class. Did money ever get in the way at that time? What was that like?
Well, in Brazil, we were poor, struggling for middle class. When we came to America, we were, you know, middle class. It was, you know, it was pretty, you know, normal. You know, I had a bicycle. I, you know, had a few toys. I mean, I didn't have the coolest sneakers. You know, I think everyone was, and that's where the culture shock came in. Like everyone was wearing Jordans back then, and I was wearing like Pumas. Do you remember Pumas?
Yeah.
You know, I had like Puma sneakers, and maybe like the most I had were like the Spice Girl sneakers, like the platforms. Like everybody was wearing them. Those are the only two things. And like I would have my birthday party at McDonald's, you know, and that for me was great, you know. So that was kind of the dynamic of how, you know, we were, but it was fine. And then I think that being also an immigrant doesn't help out in America, because